Hello, I'm Adrian Clarke and welcome to the breakdown. It was a rough, tough, hostile visit to Stamford Bridge on Sunday, wasn't it? And look, despite having that man advantage for around about an hour, Arsenal did have to settle for a 1-0 draw in the end. Was it frustrating? Yes. Was it disappointing? Absolutely it was. You only had to look at the faces of the Arsenal players at the final whistle for you to know that they felt it was a missed opportunity and 2 points definitely dropped. But, when you dust yourself down and sort of look to move on, I think a point away to an informed Chelsea that are flying at the moment and who really did bring their A game. I was impressed with them on the day. I think a point at Stamford Bridge is no disaster at all. So we move on. No real damage done. But it was a really interesting game and a tough battle for Arsenal. Look, on today's show, I'm going to analyse the key moments, the key tactics, some stats. Towards the end of the show, I'll also dish out some player ratings, so make sure you stick around for those as well. Right, where should we start? I think we'll start with duels because, above all else, this was a physical game. It was a real war, wasn't it? And I think Chelsea wanted it to be that. They've watched Sunderland sort of unsettle us a little bit at the Stadium of Light, get after us. They know we're tough. Arsenal won't lie down for anybody. But that game at Sunderland did show that Arsenal can look a little bit ragged at times when you put balls in the box, when you play physically against us. So that's what Chelsea tried to do. They went very direct on the day and were super hostile, weren't they? They were really up for a fight. Let's look at the duels then. These stats come from the Opta Analyst website if you want to check them out. 41.2% of the duels were won by Arsenal, which is way below par. You'd expect to be. Now, Arsenal, most games will win more than 50% of their duels. They didn't here. And more concerningly, look at the aerial duels, 29.3% success rate there. The only Arsenal players that won more duels than they lost were Timber, Calafiori and Saka. So you could look at it and say, was that a sign of us missing Gabriel and Saliba? I think, yeah, maybe. Because they're so dominant, aren't they, those two defenders? They've got that aura and power and they'll go and mix it with anybody. So, yeah, I think that is a factor. But I also think the pattern of the game, the way the Anthony Taylor refereed it, giving out so many yellow cards early on in the game. 4, I think, early on for us, for all defensive players, 3 at the back 4 and Zubimendi as well. That restricted us. That limited our ability to get physical with Chelsea. So we had to hold back a little bit. And of course, things changed a touch in the second half when we had a lot more of the ball with the 11v10. But in general, I do think that we had so many yellows so early that it had a negative impact on the way we could use our muscle on Chelsea. Chelsea only remarkably had just the one yellow. And of course, they did. They did have that red as well. Right, let's talk about Chelsea's goal. It was a duel, an aerial duel we lost, of course. But before we get to that moment, let's talk about how the corner came about in the first place. There was a free kick given, wasn't there, for just an arm in the face from Hincapié on Joao Pedro that he made a meal of. And here, Reece James swings the ball into the box. And David Raya, for me, overcommits. He comes flying out. And it's not on to come and catch the ball. There's too much swerve on it. And then he has to put the brakes on and makes a panicky save from the header from Joao Pedro. Now, should Joao Pedro have gotten the end of the ball ahead of Mosquera? Maybe not. I think that if Saliba or Gabriel was picking him up, maybe that wouldn't have happened. But he did get on the end of it. And because Raya had overcommitted, he didn't know his position. He didn't know where the goal was, and he just had to push the header wide. Even though the header was going wide, he gives away an unnecessary corner. And of course, they score from that delivery. So let's take a look at the setup. There's nothing different here. There's nothing unusual. Timber always man marks, and Gabriel and Saliba both always stay in the 6-yard box as zonal. So, yeah, this doesn't impact the goal. But what Timber should do better is stop Chalobah getting into that near post domain. He's sort of out-muscled really, and he aims to get into the little zone in front of Declan Rice, and that's exactly where he gets. And as you can see here, as the ball gets flighted in, Timber's in a bad position. He's caught underneath the flight of the ball. He's too tight to Chalobah. He can't jump, can't challenge for it. It's up to Rice to do his best to get there, but as you know, it's not easy for Rice either. in that situation. He flicks it on. And of course, we know what happened. The rest is history. It flicks over everybody and lands in the bottom corner. So really, really disappointing to go one goal down, especially against the 10 men of Chelsea. Right, there's a lot of talk, obviously, about Hincapié and Mosquera having to play, I think, for only the second time together. They played against Brighton, hadn't they, in the Carabao Cup, and did okay in that game. But this is the first in the Premier League. Mosquera, for me, was quite quiet. Wasn't heavily involved. Had a lot of the ball, but in defensive situations, we didn't see that much of him. Hincapié seemed to be really involved, and he did some good things, and he did some things that were not so good. And I think we'll start with some of those, actually, in the first half, where I think he was a touch over-eager. This is a great example here of that sort of eagerness to make things happen. It's a simple throw-in. Joao Pedro goes short, and Hincapié steams in behind him. He really tries to get tight, tries to steal the ball, I think, and he's too late. He's not there quick enough, and Joao Pedro nods it off to Estevao, and he can't put the brakes on. And of course, as we roll it on, Joao Pedro spins him, he gets goal side. And you'll remember from this particular opportunity, he crosses it in, it hits Mosquera, comes out to Estevao, who's only about 8 or 9 yards out. It's not an open goal, but the goal is gaping, and he blasts it over, thankfully, from an Arsenal perspective. So that chance doesn't come around if Hincapié doesn't try and win the ball, if he just holds his ground and plays it a little bit more sensibly. There was one other hairy moment, actually, before half-time involving Hincapié, and it came from a long ball, and Chelsea played a lot of these in the game, a la Sunderland. This one's aimed into Enzo, just flicks it on for him, and he's in a good position initially, and he gets to the ball first, but he gets control of it and turns, but he's awkward on the turn, and Hincapié sort of loses his balance and falls over. And here, as we see the second slide, he's in a brilliant position here, Joao Pedro, to potentially go and score. Look at Calafiori, he's already on the move, he's sensing danger, he's ready to sort of try and slow down Joao Pedro, and he does it brilliantly. He gets back in and delays him. So does Hincapié, to his credit, recovers fast. And then look at this. Look at this. Inside that red circle, Joao Pedro surrounded by 5 red shirts. That's great recovery from Arsenal, and that shows the desire that Mikel Arteta is always talking about, the real desire to defend and not to concede goals. I absolutely loved the way that we all got back into position there. As for Hincapié, I think he played with real courage in the second half. Obviously, left-back Miles Skelly wasn't hardly at left-back. He was in midfield, so he was having to cover that whole side on his own. And Neto is a real danger, isn't he? He's quick and direct, and he wanted to get him sent off. He kept running at him. There was one brilliant tackle, wasn't there, from Hincapié inside the box that I really admired. He stayed nice and calm. And, of course, late on, he got forward a little bit as well, and he almost set up what could have been the winning goal for Arsenal. Let's have a quick look at it. Yeah, we create a nice little situation. He's the centre-back at the time, by the way, but look where he is. He's shown ambition, and Madueke slips him in. Inside the box, I've circled there, 3v2. That's what Arsenal are looking for. They've dragged a lot of Chelsea players out to the side, and it means they're a bit light in the middle, and that 3v2 is great news. And, of course, he puts the ball in. It's a beautiful ball in. And Timber attacks it. So does Gyökeres. And look, it's unlucky. I've heard people try to criticise Timber, but for me, if you're in that position with the noise of the crowd, you've got away from your man, you are not ducking there. Even if you think you've heard something, you're not. You're not ducking. I'm sorry. He's got to go for it. And look, it's unfortunate. He takes it off the head of Gyökeres, and the chance goes a big, and we have to accept the draw. Now, we got a draw because we scored a good goal. Let's take a little look at that, shall we? It started with Rice driving out from kind of a centre-back position up the pitch, feeding it into Ødegaard, who he helped to create some nice little overloads out on that right-hand side. And this was a good one. What I want you to look at here is Timber. Timber has come on the inside there, a little bit like Hincapié was a moment ago when I showed you that. He's occupying Chalobah, the left side centre-back, and that's really, really important here because he's marking a player that ultimately has no interest in getting in the box to score. So we move it out wide to Saka, and as we roll it on, you will see, and Chalobah stayed left. Timber's moved out of the way, but Chalobah's not in the box anyway. So he thinks, right, I'll get involved. I'll double up on Saka. which means inside the danger zone, they're a centre-back lie. And look, Gusto is absolutely isolated. Neto's doing nothing. He's just standing there. And he's got 3 red shirts around him. And Marino's run off the back of Fofana, who was marking him on the edge of the box. And then he's taken his eyes off him. It's a brilliant run from Marino. And the ball in is perfect. And Marino heads in another clutch goal. Brilliant header, wasn't it? And I thought it was another good performance, actually, from Mikel. Marino. Now, what do we make of the tactics in the game from Mikel Arteta? The decision making. For me, I didn't mind it at all. I thought it was right to go with the 2 false 9s again. Eze was a bit quiet, but Marino, with those movements, the angles he pulls off of defenders from, I thought caused a few problems. And of course, he instigated the red card. And I want to show you a little clip of the passage of play before that shocking challenge from Moises Caicedo. Here it is. Timber's looking up for a pass. And Zubimendi, look how advanced he is. He makes a run to drag a blue shirt away. And Marino comes from the other side of the pitch, arcing his run across the centre-backs behind Caicedo to receive the pass from Timber. And of course, he controls that pass and then nutmegs Caicedo, who catches him late. I didn't think he did it on purpose. He slipped a little bit. I described it on commentary as a definite orange. It's subjective whether you thought that was enough for a red or not. Delighted it was, of course. But that was Marino. Clever play from him to nick the ball away from Caicedo. And it gave us a big leg up at the time. Start of the second half, Mikel Arteta made us up. Moises Caicedo for Calafiori. Partly, I'm guessing that was partly to do with the yellow, but mainly to do with the fact that we're playing 10. Let's get an extra man in the centre. Let's get him in central midfield. Even though he's playing left back, let's get him in central midfield and we can have the spare man. And of course, if we've got an extra man in midfield and they don't bring someone else in there, we've got complete control. If they do bring someone in there, it leaves space somewhere else, preferably in the wide areas for us to go and hurt Chelsea. So I think the idea of that approach was absolutely spot on. And I also think it was really good for Moises Caicedo because he had a tough time against Bayern. And if he sits on the bench for 3 or 4 weeks, doesn't play, that confidence that's sapped away from him just eats away at you. But this is the best way. Get back out there and show that you can be a key player. And actually, I thought he did fine. I thought he did really well. Have a look here at his pass map, actually. It's pretty good. Look at that. I mean, he did a little bit of defending, of course, but only one loose pass. That was a strange one out onto the right-hand side. You know, everywhere else, in those central areas, he looked to keep the ball, and he did keep the ball. In terms of what happened next, I thought the early subs of Ødegaard and Madueke made sense. Martinelli was really quiet. He was a bit off it. And I think sacrificing Zubimendi on a yellow was the right thing to do to get Eze and Ødegaard together either side of Rice. Obviously, you sacrifice Rice's power, but I think in the circumstances, it was the right thing to do. Gyökeres came on a little bit later for Eze, with Marino dropping into that role. And again, it kind of made sense. I mean, he's got 20 minutes to go and score a goal. He almost got 2. You know, the one that Timber takes off his head, and also the rebound where he ends up getting a yellow card. So, I think Arteta can look himself in the mirror and think, I did everything I could to help win this game. But what you can't help is decision-making in the final third and, you know, those all-important big moments where players have to make the right calls. Let's have another look at this overload down the right, because I thought that was something we did really well late on via Ødegaard, really. Here it is. Mosquera goes into Saka. And what you'll notice here is Cucurella has been drawn towards the ball. He's left Saka, which really didn't happen very often. But Mosquera misses Cucurella out and gets it to Saka, who then, of course, feeds it to Timber. So we've got that overload with the red circle, 3v2. And here, he feeds it into the box. Gyökeres, it sort of hits him really, sets it for Marino, and he's unlucky. He strikes the ball beautifully. It's a decent save. And then from the follow-up, Gyökeres tries to score and can't quite get there, can he? And he ends up picking up a yellow. The shape of the team towards the end of the game, it was kind of like a 4-2-4, with Rice playing almost like a centre-back, really, because Lewis Skelly was very much in midfield, as was Marino. Hincapié really was a left-back. Let's show you an example, actually, of this. This was actually in the build-up phase, I think, for the incident that you've just seen. So here, Rice goes into Mosquera, and that's before he feeds it into Saka. That's the shape of the team. So 4-2-4. Again, I find it hard to sort of be critical of that. He was trying to be proactive, Mikel Arteta, but unfortunately the players just didn't quite have the legs. They're a little bit weary after a tough week, and they didn't quite have what it takes to get that all-important second goal. For me, Declan Rice was Arsenal's best player. He was main man. In the first half, there were two great individual moments from Declan. The first was when he got nutmegged inside the box by Pedro Neto, and then this unbelievable block took place on the stretch. Absolutely heroic stuff from Declan Rice. And there was also one brilliant run, wasn't there, where, again, Neto comes in off the right, he runs at Rice, and Rice wins it. You can see that here. He wins the ball, and then he's off, isn't he? He's on his bike. The ball gets fed to Eze, and Eze plays a beautiful pass in between defenders for Martinelli. And all this is happening at great speed, of course. He helps it on, and Rice, he's still running. He gets up into that final third and then cuts it back for Martinelli, and his shot isn't bad either. So, Declan Rice was terrific, and I think in the second half he held things together quite nicely for us as well. Always looking, even though he's playing deeper, he was always looking to drive the team forward, and that's all you can ask for, really. In terms of the match and the key stats, aside from the goals, so Arsenal only had 8 shots. It's the fewest in a Premier League game from Arteta's side since that defeat at Bournemouth in October 2024. So that's frustrating, especially when you're playing against 10 men for an hour. So that is something the team will look to remedy against Brentford next time out. And of course, Chelsea had 11 shots in the game. I thought they were really positive, actually, with 10 men. You know, still carried a threat, didn't they? Still got bodies forward. Yeah, 11 shots. That's the most Arsenal faced in a Premier League game since the opening day, where we were pretty loose, actually, weren't we, against Manchester United. Look, I will credit Chelsea here for making it a stop-start game, for making it hostile, for making it breaking up the play, because that is probably the best way to get the better of Arsenal, if Arsenal are a fraction off it. You know, normally we'll be able to play around teams, but just we didn't really find our flow in this game. I looked at the ball in play stats, actually, and last season's average in terms of ball in play in the Premier League was 56 minutes, 58 seconds. The year before it was 58 minutes and 12 seconds, the average ball in play. In this match, 50 minutes and 50 seconds. So you've lost 6 or 8 minutes there. In terms of the ball being in play. Just to give it a comparison, the Forest-Brighton game, which took place on Sunday, saw the ball in play for over 60 minutes. Now, that is probably unusually high, but it just shows you the type of match it was, and the ball wasn't alive anywhere near as often as we would have wanted it to have been. So, look, I don't think there's any denying it's 2 points dropped. You know, it's a bad goal to concede. Arsenal will be frustrated that they didn't go and score 2 goals in that hour that they had with the man advantage. But I just think a tough week, a brilliant week with wins against Spurs and Bayern Munich, just caught up with the players, and those yellow cards limited our physicality. And that was a problem. Look, we drew at Stamford Bridge without a main striker and with both centre-backs missing. It's not a disaster. We take it all day long. Anyway, player ratings time. Right, here we go. I'm going to go with David Raya, 6. Didn't have loads to do, but I do think he was partly culpable for giving that corner away for the goal. So I'm sort of being a bit harsh on him there. Jurriën Timber, who I think has been 7 or 8 or 9 most weeks, I'm gonna mark him down actually to a 6 this time around. He did some good things going forward, as he always does, but he did lose Chalobah for the goal. And you know that was problematic. He did take that header off the head of Gyökeres at the end of the game, even though I say he had to go for it, which I think he did. But it's a bit harsh, but I'm going to go with a 6 there. I think both centre backs, I can't go beyond a 6 either. I think they were fine, did all right, but they didn't win their duels, and Chelsea did cause them caused them a few issues. They were okay without either player having what I would describe as a really good game. Calafiori would be the same, I think, in that 45 minutes he had. I'm going to give him a 6 as well. Zubimendi's the same, a little bit quiet. That early booking hampered him for sure. And he didn't have that influence that you really want him to have. Declan Rice would be an 8. He's my main man. I thought with and without the ball he was terrific. Great leadership skills again. Saka I'm going to give a 7. I thought he won his duel with Cucurella. Cucurella was coming after him, wasn't he? But I think that by and large he did ever so well. He did miss, he missed a couple of shots. Some of his decision making wasn't amazing, but that cross for the goal was 10 out of 10, wasn't it? So he's definitely upgraded from a possible 6 to a 7. Eberechi Chiesa, I'm going to be harsh here and go 5. I just think with the heights that he hit in previous games, I mean, in sensational form, I just think he was way below that here. He didn't do anything bad in particular, but he just didn't get enough of the ball. He didn't influence the game. Apart from that one brilliant pass to Martinelli, he was very, very much on the periphery. So I'm going to go a 5 there. I'll also give Gabriel Martinelli a 5. He was very much on the edge of the game. Just that one run and shot of note. And then up top, Mikel Merino, I'll give him a 7. I think it was another really good game for him. Great goal. Unlucky not to score again in the second half. Helped to get Caicedo sent off with a really clever piece of play. So yeah, well played. Him, I think Lewis Kelly did pretty well when he came on. I'm going to give him a 7. Same for Ødegaard. I think he knitted things together nicely down that right-hand side and helped us, for sure, create some chances. And then 6s for Madueke and for Gyökeres, who probably didn't impact the game. I thought Madueke was a bit safe. And Gyökeres didn't get many touches at all, did he? So, yeah, there's my player ratings. That is my breakdown of the game. It was a toughie, that is for sure. But from an Arsenal point of view, we take the point and we move on. Just got to make sure that we beat Brentford on Wednesday night. That'll be an awkward test as well. They'll go direct. They'll be robust as well, and they'll certainly try and be aggressive. So can we find a way to do better against that type of opponent in midweek? Let's hope so. I'll be back on Thursday to review that one. For now, it's a bye from me.